This video is brought to you by True Tales of Buried Treasure, the largest collection of old treasure magazines in the West. On our website, you can search for individual treasure stories by region, or buy our original magazines themselves. To pay us a visit, please click on the link in the description. Enjoy. The royal Spanish governor sat atop his horse, a cruel smile playing on his lips as he watched the procession of pack mules and their drovers descend into the narrow, dry wash. As the train reached the ideal ambush position, directly across from where he lay in wait, he raised the pennon on his lance. The morning silence shattered instantly as a barrage of musket fire and arrows tore through the caravan, felling most of the 15 pack animals and 2 of the 3 men leading them. At a second signal, his Indian auxiliaries let out piercing war cries and took off in pursuit of the lone survivor. Still wearing his brutal grin, Governor Diego de Peralta strode down the wash, watching as the dying men were scalped by Pueblo warriors. A swift search of the rawhide-wrapped mule packs revealed a treasure, more than $250,000 in raw gold nuggets and dust. The ambush, executed with military precision, took place in 1621. 2.5 centuries before Jacob Walls stirred up Phoenix with his tales of gold bars and hidden Spanish workings in Arizona's Superstition Mountains. The victims of this ambush were 3 Dutch miners who had been transporting gold from their claim near the headwaters of the Gila River to the Royal Mint in Mexico City. Their only crime had been refusing to pay Governor Peralta a share of their profits in exchange for protection. Enraged by this defiance, the governor had bribed a company of Indian militia with the promise of loot, sending them into the rugged mountains southwest of Socorro. Their mission: to uncover the secret trail the Dutchmen used to transport their gold to El Paso del Norte. After weeks of reconnaissance, the ambush was successfully sprung. Yet despite relentless efforts by the governor and his men, the Dutch miners' hidden gold mine and the rumored $2,500,000 in buried bullion were never found. The brutal killings left behind a legend, one even greater than the famous lost lode in the Superstitions. And like that legendary treasure, this one too remains waiting to be discovered. The lure of mineral wealth in what would become New Mexico had begun decades earlier. In 1580, a Spanish expedition of priests and cavalry explored the upper Rio Grande, which they called the Great River of the North. As they moved from pueblo to pueblo, they prospected the surrounding mountains and found rich mineral deposits. Near the future site of Santa Fe, Pueblo villagers revealed a mine where native silver was extracted, crushed, and used as body paint for dancers in sacred ceremonies. Later expeditions confirmed the findings, bringing back samples that assayed at over 50% pure silver. These reports, widely circulated in Mexico, ignited interest in colonizing the Rio Grande Valley between Socorro and Taos. By 1598, thousands of colonists were authorized to settle in the region, taking control of New Mexico in an almost bloodless conquest. The years that followed saw feverish mining activity, as officials sought to attract even more settlers. The viceroy printed handbills boasting of rich mining discoveries, while the clergy eagerly promoted reports of the region's untapped wealth, encouraging fortune seekers to migrate to the northern frontier. One such appeal caught the attention of 3 men from the Spanish Netherlands who were determined to make their fortune in mining. At the time, Spain ruled over the Netherlands, much of Eastern Europe and Italy, making its empire vast and diverse. Citizens from all corners of the Spanish domain were drawn to the opportunities in the New World. Among those fortune seekers were Jacob Fresh, Jacob de Lorenz, and Rodrigo Bale. The 3 had found modest success mining in Mexico, but were searching for the one great strike that would make them rich enough to return to Holland in triumph. When they came across a report written by the head of the Franciscan order about the mineral prospects in New Mexico, they saw their opportunity. Fray Alonso de Benavides had written, "All this land is full of great treasures, of mines very rich and prosperous in silver and gold, particularly the hill of the Pueblo of Socorro, chief town and head of this province of Piros." Inspired by these words, the Dutch miners set out to claim their share of New Mexico's riches. But their journey would end not in wealth, but in betrayal, bloodshed, and an enduring mystery, one that still beckons treasure hunters to this day. The ease with which silver could be extracted from this hill was unmatched throughout the Indies. This promising assessment became the foundation for the Dutch trio's survey of the province. Disguised as anonymous prospectors, they traveled with the annual convoy to Socorro and used the small Spanish community as their base of operations. The mineral deposits along the Rio Grande had already been thoroughly examined, with the most valuable sites actively being worked. It quickly became clear that if they wanted to tap into untouched mining territory, they would have to leave the security of the valley and its well-guarded garrisons. The most promising area for exploration lay in the vast, nearly inaccessible alpine region whose snowfields fed the headwaters of the Gila River. However, this was the stronghold of the Gila and Warm Springs Apaches, fierce warriors locked in relentless conflict with European settlers. At times, the Apaches traded raw gold with Spanish traders in exchange for goods, which indicated that their source of gold was hidden somewhere in the wilderness. Recognizing the existence of a rich, undiscovered gold deposit in the nameless mountain ranges southwest of Socorro was one thing. Finding a way to gain safe access to it was another. The key question was, what did the Apaches need that the Dutchmen could provide? With careful study, they found the answer: horses. Horses were the lifeblood of Apache survival and warfare. The Spanish considered any Native American caught riding one to be a serious threat, often executing them on sight. Meanwhile, the Apaches, poorly armed compared to their European adversaries, desperately needed more mounts. To secure access to the hidden gold, the Dutchmen would have to supply them with what they needed. After studying the locations of horse herds on nearby ranches, the trio managed to cut out a small herd of about 20 horses. Moving quickly, they crossed beyond the range of Spanish militia patrols without being detected. Once they reached the open expanse of the plain of St. Augustine, they built a large signal fire. By the next day, an Apache war party arrived, signaling their willingness to negotiate. Hours of tense discussion led to an agreement. The Apaches would reveal the location of their native gold deposit, and in return, the Dutchmen would be allowed to mine for 1 day per horse delivered. 3 days of travel brought the Apaches and their new trading partners to the gold site. The deposit lay within a high-altitude desert box canyon, where a spring at the upper end fed a small stream that vanished into the sand less than 100 yards from its source. The canyon floor was littered with gold nuggets, some as large as walnuts, mixed with smaller particles. Just above the spring, a 10-foot black rock outcrop stood against the landscape, its dark veins interlaced with pure gold in the form of lumps and wire-like strands. At the base of the ledge, debris piled several feet high contained nearly solid masses of gold. By the end of the first day, the Dutchmen had gathered more than $100,000 in gold bullion. During their initial 20-day stay in the Apache Canyon, they focused on collecting exposed nuggets and eroded gold fragments scattered throughout the valley. When the Apaches returned to enforce the terms of their agreement, the trio had amassed over 1,000 pounds of gold, valued at more than $500,000. Unable to carry such a vast fortune with them, they buried most of their haul at the base of the spring. Their pact with the Apaches was extended, allowing them to return in exchange for more horses. Slowly, the Dutchmen made their way back to central Mexico, where they converted their bullion into credits in the royal treasury. Over the next 2 years, they repeated the process without incident, stealing small numbers of horses from Rio Grande haciendas and trading them for access to the Apache Canyon. Meanwhile, the Spaniards assumed their mounting losses were simply the result of Indian raids, never suspecting the truth behind the hidden fortune in the Apache wilderness. The Dutchmen remained discreet in New Mexico, spending minimal time in Spanish settlements to avoid attracting attention. However, as their deposits of raw bullion accumulated in the royal treasury, amounting to nearly $500,000, officials in Mexico grew suspicious. They informed the governor of New Mexico, who, in turn, ordered the garrison at El Paso to detain the miners the next time they passed through. The garrison commander was instructed to hold them until the governor could personally interrogate them. When the Dutchmen next arrived in El Paso with their pack train of burros, they were greeted by the garrison commander. Though his request was polite, it was clear that their stay was mandatory. An important figure from Santa Fe was on his way to discuss matters of mutual interest. The Dutchmen immediately sensed the true nature of this summons. Their choices were limited. They could either take on an unwanted partner in their enterprise or forfeit everything they had hidden in the Apache Canyon, a fortune of $3 million. Feigning compliance, the trio set up camp near El Paso, appearing to await their meeting. However, on a dark winter night, they quietly slipped away, heading south toward Chihuahua. Once there, they deposited the gold they had with a treasury official, intending to transport the remaining treasure in discreet shipments of $250,000 along uncharted trails west of the Camino Real, from Chihuahua to Santa Fe. The governor, however, had no intention of letting them escape so easily. When news of their flight reached Santa Fe, he saw it as a direct challenge to his authority, one that demanded severe retribution. He assembled a militia force, promising them equal shares of the miners' fortune. While such a promise may not have been necessary, many of the Pueblo warriors would have gladly killed the Dutchmen without reward. The governor was determined to leave nothing to chance. Riding to El Paso, the governor and his men established a network of observation posts south of the Gila region, covering the likely routes the Dutchmen would take. On their first return trip to Chihuahua, the miners were ambushed. 2 of them were killed outright, while one, though wounded, managed to escape. The lone survivor struggled his way to the mission in Socorro. Before succumbing to his injuries, he recounted the tale of the hidden gold to the Franciscan monk overseeing the church. The details of his story were later included in a formal report intended to discredit the governor and remove him from office. However, the political maneuvering failed, and the governor remained in power. Determined to claim the lost fortune, he led multiple expeditions into the Gila region in search of the fabled canyon. Each attempt ended in failure, as Apache warriors thwarted his forces before they could locate the mine. To this day, no one has been able to rediscover the lost canyon or its immense wealth. Occasionally, Apaches have been known to bring raw gold into reservation trading posts, exchanging it for goods. Whether they still know the secret location of the lost mine or merely stumble upon remnants of its riches remains a mystery. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to read the original article or purchase the magazine from which it was taken, please check out our website, truetalesofburiedtreasure.com.